Alright, this is my channel, as you can see. Thank you for clicking on the video if you did. Just here, I wanted to make a video that was a bit easier to edit. Hopefully the audio's okay, and all of that tomfoolery. Anyhow, it's going to be a random question generator. So just talking, really. We'll get on to the first one. The first question is, do you like to plan things out or be spontaneous? I would say I definitely prefer be more spontaneous with how I do things. So, I mean, I like having a plan because, you know, it's something solid, but I don't mind not having such a strict form for doing things. And conversely, when I do actually have a plan and it falls apart, that can kind of suck. So that might also be why I prefer to be more spontaneous with what I do. But, alright, that's that. Next question. What is your favorite food? Favorite food? I can't say I have an exact favorite, you know? Maybe I like sushi. Pizza's pretty cool. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, which apparently is less of a favorite thing among most people, which is a shock to me, because you think peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, you know, they're like a classic. But I guess not. Alright, next question. Favorite place to shop? You know, in truth, I don't really have a favorite place. I don't know, like eBay or something. Like, I don't really have a favorite place to shop. Maybe like a bookstore? I could see a bookstore. But after that, it's like, you know. What did you want to become when you were younger is the next question. I had a few different things. And when I was younger, like, okay, I guess they mean when I was like really small. And I'm going like elementary school, I guess is where we're putting this. That was a few different things. So I wanted to become an archaeologist at first. It was really big, archaeologist. And then I had like this small little phase where it was like an astronaut, what I wanted to become, you know? But I think that one's really what stuck for everyone else, you know? And for a long time, I was, I guess, working to become, you know, like an astronaut or something like. That's not really what I wanted to do. I much like the idea of being an archaeologist because I really like dinosaurs. I mean, I was always more with like the dinosaur thing as opposed to like trains or space. Now, of course, I think space and astronomy is very interesting. You know, like I take interest in it, but I'm not so sure how much I like the idea of it. I would prefer being like a archaeologist because that seems so much cooler. You get to be outside when you're not in like a lab somewhere, and you get to dig around and at least I wager. Now most of the stuff isn't going to be dinosaur bones 24/7, but I'm sure it would happen eventually. And I've always wanted to find a fossil as well. Still kind of want to, so I guess that's what it would be. All right, and the next question: what do you like to do on a rainy day? Depends. If it's a nice rainy day, like in the summer, and I know it in advance, then I like to bring all of my plants outside, and I set them out there on the porch, and I can get some good rainwater. It helps them. But after that, I guess I spend most of the time, if it's just raining, sitting down inside or on the porch, because, you know, I like the smell of the rain. It's typically pretty cool, but not too cold. So that would be something. Next random question. What hobbies do you have and how did you get into them? Few hobbies. The first one, I really like to play the electric guitar, and that one, I got into that. There was a few different methods that all kind of led up, well, a few different things that led up to me playing the electric guitar. The first thing I played like Ace Combat, and I still, well, I guess I do kind of still watch this YouTuber called Ace Viper. Ace Viper. Wow. But he plays like War Thunder and the likes. Yeah, I know. Like, you ever heard of that game? But yeah, he played that, and he always had rock music playing in the background. And at the time, I hadn't really listened to much rock music. I had been exposed to like blues, and of course, I heard rock music before on like the radio, back when people still listened to the radio. I say like I'm that old. Ooh, am I? But anyways, yeah, and he would play rock music in his videos, and of course he's flying a plane and he's doing like ultra sick maneuvers, he's like flips and all sorts of stuff, like the sort of things that would make a pilot like black out and crash into the ground, and he's just doing this casually, and I thought it was really cool, and so I started getting into rock music, and then I also dated this one girl back when I was in high school, and she really liked rock, and it was like a very wide range of music that she liked. But rock was definitely one of the big ones, and I kind of just listened to it because, you know, sending each other playlists and all sorts of tomfoolery, and I listened to some of the music and I was like, that's not bad, and I started getting more and more into rock myself, and I figured, well, I really like it, I think it's pretty cool, why don't I just play a guitar? Because I had a guitar before, it was an acoustic, and as much as I enjoyed it, it just didn't have the same feel, you know, and so I started playing electric guitar. That's the first one. The second one, I guess you can count reading and art as hobbies, I suppose. I'm not sure how much reading goes as a hobby, but art definitely. I like drawing a lot. I've always wanted to get into painting, but definitely drawing. And I got into that back when I was much younger. Maybe when I was just getting into middle school. Because I remember, that's a throwback. Back when I was in elementary school, I spent a lot of time, it was like me and then these two other girls. They were, of course, we're all real small little rascals. And I had a few other friends, and we were all into Five Nights at Stinkin' Freddy's. It was like, man, if you could have worn the color purple and we'd have all died of a heart attack. We were that into it. And of course, they were really good at art, like really good at art for their age. They must, if they kept at it, they're probably like superstars. But anyhow, I wanted to get in art all the way back then, and we had an excellent art teacher at the school, but the class was always a complete chaotic mess, and so she couldn't really teach. But on the one occasion that she did actually manage to, she had us draw a portrait, or the beginnings of a portrait. And of course, I'm in a little friend group with the rascals, and their drawings are stunning, and mine was like horrific. It was horrible. Like, well, it was a decent start. Nobody's good when they first get at it, unless you're just that talented. But anyways, it was very rough, and so I just balled it up and put it at the back of my desk. And towards the end of the 5th grade year, we're all in the same class naturally, and it's elementary school, so we kind of just cycle classes, but we stay in that same classroom. Like, the teacher teaches multiple subjects. In any case, we're cleaning out our desk because it's towards the end of the school year, and we're about to go for the summer. And we're going through the stinking desk, like my desk, and it was like. It was like realizing you flew through a red light and there was a police right behind you. He's like, all my senses just went off, and I was like, oh dear, that drawing's in the back of the desk. And of course, we're going through all the mess and unfolding it to see what it was, because there wasn't anything else to do at the time. And they grabbed that stinking paper and they unfolded it, and they laughed for like 30 minutes easily. It was absolutely. It was horrible. But anyhow, so after that, I moved to a different state, and not because of the drawing, no, but I moved to a different state, and we were out in North Carolina for a while, and as we're moving back, it was up to me to pack everything away, because Everyone else they were off, and I just had to clean up the whole place. It was ridiculous. Whole story behind that I'm not getting into. But anyhow, it's up to me to clean the place up, and I would clean a certain amount each day, and then I would use the rest of the day to relax. And I figured I was just there, and I was listening to a bunch of nightcore, and so I just wanted to draw, and so I just started drawing, and of course it was really rough at first, but I gradually got better, and I've been doing that. But then reading, I've always liked to read, and hobbies. What other hobbies? I mean, I've always liked plants, and so of course it's that. I guess you can count fishing as a hobby, but I don't really fish very often. It's like a rare thing you do on occasion. I'm not like Jeremy Wade or anything. A bunch of other things that I could go on about, but on to the next question. All right. Do you read reviews about a movie before deciding whether to watch it or not? No. I mean, my thing is like when it comes to movies, at the very least, if you're gonna go watch the movie, 9 times out of 10 you have a general idea as to like its genre or what it might be about. I don't really see the point of watching or reading like a review. That would just like ruin the movie, I say. I don't see much point in that. Alright, next question. Alright, what would you like to get better at? Well, of course, any of the hobbies that I mentioned, I'd like to get better at. But, I suppose driving, I'd like to learn how to drift. But I guess I'd have to do something about that because I'm pretty sure it can be a bit illegal. I'll go to a proper place for that. Yeah, I wouldn't drift a car illegally. I wouldn't do that. Why would I do that? Anyways, after the hobbies, I suppose I'd like to get into the whole YouTube thing, which is why I'm recording this video. Alright, next question. What is your favorite home-cooked dish? Macaroni and cheese and potato salad. Next question. Somebody just hacked potato salad. The last book I read is the next one. It was Abraham Lincoln, the Vampire Hunter. Next question. What is the craziest thing you have ever done? The craziest thing off the top of my head, there's 2 things. The craziest, though, means there can only be one. So, it would have to be back when I was in preschool. This was like ages ago. Like in preschool. And, of course, I am in said preschool. But it was like, I remember the class they were all very against me. I can't remember having any friends in that place. The teachers were nice. They were old ladies. Like they weren't mean or anything. And they would give out like cookies and all, like legit, like proper nice old ladies. And I'm here in the class. Nobody really likes me. And we had this little cooking area. And so they gave us time to just go and play around in the classroom in between actual lessons. And I'm just in the little little wooden cook area, like you see, like I'm in that. And of course it's all just fake and the likes. But for whatever reason, the whole class, now mind you, we're just preschoolers. We might have like 3 brain cells in between the whole class. And the whole class gets together, like the teachers just sat and watched from a distance, and they pushed the giant stinking wooden playset on me, like the wooden cook set. It was like the most ridiculous thing. I wasn't expecting it. They just banded together and tried to squash me like I was like Caesar. I was like, what? And the whole thing falls on my back, and I'm realizing, my goodness, what's going on? And it's like I'm enraged, and I flip the stinking playset over back on top of them, and then I'm throwing stuff around, and I grab my shoes and I'm throwing them at the old ladies, and I'm just tearing the classroom apart. And eventually they take me off to the nurse, and I have to get this wooden splinter taken out from my side. It was ridiculous. That would have to be one of the craziest things I've ever done. Although to be fair, I think it was warranted. Alright, next question. If you knew you couldn't fail, what would you do? There's an interesting one. I was gonna say I would. The first thing that comes to mind is like conquering the world. But what do I want with that? What do I want with that? You know? You go and you conquer the world, and what does that bring? What does that bring? Death, really. And I can't say I'm fit to rule the world. So I can't say I would do that. So then the next thing that would come to mind would be to chase my dreams. But there are times where I'm not really sure what those are. And then there's another part of it where it's like, if you knew you couldn't fail, would you try? I feel like it's that risk of failure that actually drives people. Because you're afraid to fail. And just like how being afraid of a snake in the garden would make you jump, run and grab a shovel or a spade. If there's nothing to push you, then I dare say 9 times out of 10 you aren't going to move. So, as funny as it is, if I couldn't fail, if I knew I couldn't fail, I would probably do nothing. Which is a really strange thing. I would probably do nothing. Alright, next question. Have you ever peed in the shower? Maybe when I was like 3. I can't say. I hope not. But I can't say. Alright, next question. Would you rather be rich and never find true love, or be poor and find true love? Well, is the person that I love rich? Not to say that money is everything, and most certainly isn't everything. And I do think there are many people who have infinite riches. They would very gladly trade that for true love. Now, I can't say I've ever found true love, and I can't say I've ever been rich. So I'm weighing 2 hypotheticals here. And so it's like, would I? No, because eventually with money, what I've noticed, you can only really have but so much. After you get a certain amount of money, it's like, it's all the same. Like, it just becomes a number. There's not really anything you can do with it after a certain point. You might say, oh, you could just buy more stuff, start up a company, set your kids off right. That's all great. But ultimately, you just hit a limit. Life loses its push. It's not to say I want to live a poor life, but I guess it would be humble. I don't. Whatever. I would probably be poor and find true love. Of course, how poor would matter, because I don't want to be like homeless. I don't really want that. All right, next question. Do you have any pets? I have a few pets. So of course there's a cat. There's the cat. The cat's named Alicia. It's a calico. Very fat cat, but she's nice. She bites my heels every now and again, though. That's not nice. But usually she's pretty nice. And I have a turtle named Rocky, and then I have a few goldfish. One of them's named the Hun, the next one's named the European, the next one's named Secret Treasure, the next one's named Dracula or Alucard, one of the two, varies. The next one is named Luce. He was originally Secret Treasure Nega, but he had an accident and he survived, and that was pretty cool. And the next one after that, what is that one named? Oh yeah, Devourer of Fish Flakes and or Pellets. And then after that, there's a Chinese algae eater, and his name is Demoto. And then after that, I have a bunch of mosquito fish, and like your run-of-the-mill guppies. All of these fish are feeder fish, except for the Chinese algae eater. And I picked them up because they look so miserable, and I was like, oh gee guys, I feel bad for you, so I got them. But anyways, there's a bunch of mosquito fish and guppies, and those are the Imperials, and like the race from Elder Scrolls. But anyways, there's all the plants. I don't know if they count as pets. You have to take care of them. They have to be in certain conditions. So I guess you could count them as pets. You don't do anything, they die. So kind of pets. But anyways, all of those. And in case you were wondering, the name Alicia for the cat is also an Elder Scrolls reference. I really like the Elder Scrolls. Alright, next question. What was my least favorite subject in school? It would almost certainly be math. I think math is very interesting, but all the way up until very recently, which is like in college, all the way up until very recently, all of the subjects all the math classes that I had have been very abrasive, you know? Like, it takes a lot and gives very little. I saw no use for it for a long time. Although I think math is interesting because, you know, it's a logical sort of subject. There's typically only one right answer. And so I really enjoy math as a subject, but not usually as a class. My most recent teacher was very good. And also with college, you're far more on your own. And I found that having to actually push for my own sake to learn math was very interesting. That, and they let you listen to music during tests. And since I haven't been all that good at math until recently, and I say all that good, like goodness knows, let's not get ahead of ourselves. But anyways, they let you listen to your own music during the tests. And it would be like a boss fight almost. I'd be fighting for my stinking life, but there was a bit of fun in the challenge, so I didn't mind it. Alright, what is the longest you have gone without sleep? I pulled an all-nighter once, and then I slept for about 12 hours. Or was it more than that? I remember because the girlfriend that I had at the time, she was sorely displeased because I just went like ages without talking to her. She thought I ghosted her, and she was livid. But after that, not very long. Alright, what is a short-term and long-term goal of yours? I think I'll do 2 more after this, and then I'll call it so the video doesn't get too long. A short-term goal of mine. I suppose I'd like to get a job. Being unemployed, it's lovely and horrible at the same time. You know, as aggravating as it can be to go and work a job, it has its perks, you know, Having money in your pocket is always a great thing, you know? And there are plenty of things that I'd like to do. Hopefully a lot of them very soon. But long-term goals, I suppose I'd like to become successful on YouTube, so subscribe please. And after that, I'd like to get a car. Yeah. He wants to drift when he doesn't have a car. Yeah. Very funny. But anyways, I'd like to get a car. I'd like to get a house. But you're in a house. Yeah, I get it. But I'd like to get a car and I'd like to get a house. And then I suppose I'd like to go to church more as well. But that can be a short-term goal because Sunday's right around the corner. So many things there. Alright, 2 more. Am I smarter than my parents? Well, as soon as you start assuming you're smarter than other people, you've made a mistake, in my opinion. And my parents, my dad is very smart, I think. And I learn a lot from him. And if you start my thing is like, you start thinking you're smarter than other people, and you can't really learn anything from them, can you? You know? You could say, oh, you learn from other people's mistakes. And yeah, that I can see. But I don't think it's good to see yourself as being higher than anyone really, except for your enemies, and even that's with God, so we'll get to that. But anyhow, to my parents, I would say no, but time will tell. Anyway, the last question. If you found $100 on the ground, what would you do with it? Now, I'd like to say I'd get the $100, put it into my bank account, and then invest it so I can actually turn it into something, because it's not costing me anything, and it's not very often that you find a $100 bill. But I guess giving it to a church wouldn't be that bad. Or I could buy something fancy for the family, eat something decent. Or I could just save it. I could buy the fishes some fancier fish food. Or the turtle for that matter. But what would I do with it for certain? Put it in my pocket. Alright. One more. How do you handle stress in your life? Well, how I handle stress. There are times when I would say I don't handle stress. I kind of just ignore it. And I know it's like, how do you ignore stress, you know? It's like a bridge ignoring the weight that's on top of it, you know? I mean, you can say it doesn't bother you, but with enough weight added, you still buckle. Everyone has a limit. But at the same time, and I guess it's not too good a thing to admit, I would say that I try not to pay the stress any mind. But at the same time, I think that also means that I don't pay much attention to the thing causing the stress. Of course, there's the feelings that come with too much stress, like I get upset and the likes. But I wouldn't dare lash out, you know? That's just ridiculousness. There's no reason for that, I think. But I can't say that actually helps me handle stress. So on that, I cannot say that I handle stress, you know? I just ignore it. I just put it to the side. And that probably isn't the healthiest method. But I refuse to see a therapist. I'll never go to therapy. You can't make me. Alright, one more question. If you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be? Well, my take is, unless it's some very obscure food, if you're only eating that thing for the rest of your life, I dare say your life won't be very long-lived. You know, variety is the spice of life, and without it, you'll probably die from a lack of proper nutrition. But in terms of what food I would pick, probably sushi, because it's a very broad thing. It's typically very healthy. You can eat your fill off of it, and 9 times out of 10, it comes with all of the things that you can need. You've got your grain and the rice. You've probably, hopefully, got the vegetable, whatever you want out of that, and the seaweed wrap. Whatever goes inside, like I like avocado. I really like avocado. You like avocado in sushi? Oh my goodness, he's insane. Yeah, I know. Whatever. Avocado can be in it. You can get seafood in there. You can get anything really, and there's a lot of variety that goes into it. But then you can also see something like a sandwich, and then you could quite literally put whatever you want in the sandwich. So I think it really boils down to how specific you want to be. If it's a food type, like something very vague, like pizza or sushi or a sandwich, like I said, then you could customize those things however you want, and you wouldn't really have to worry about a lack of nutrition. Like you could say, I want, I don't know, stinking vitamin sushi, and just unwrap it and eat everything individually. And you can have your stinking vitamins and everything that you need. So it really boils down to how specific you want the question to be. But it's 28 minutes long, the recording, and I think I'll cut it off at a nice even 30. Probably not. So one more. Why not? It's like gambling. Do you believe in fate? Well, that's a very interesting one. It depends, you know? Because if you want to look at religion, and you're considering it from a religious sort of standpoint, then by technicality you would have to say yes, you know? Now, I've heard people say that Jesus died for us before the foundations of the earth were laid down, you know? And for that to be the case, and for him to have died for all of our sins before we even existed, it would have to imply that, well, he knew that we would sin. And that would at the very least imply that our actions are predestined. But then that opens up a really weird spot, you know? Because I'm not in any place to cast judgment on anyone, you know? I was not expecting this to take this turn. Like I was talking about pizza and sushi a second ago. But if our actions are predestined, then, and I'm in no position to judge anyone, only God is, then what would that mean for some people, Now, it's a bit presumptuous, because I don't know where I'm going, So, people who don't do well in life, and they aren't forgiven by God, which seems absolutely absurd to me because, well, God is merciful, very merciful, For that example, to be there where someone doesn't get forgiven, it raises a very interesting question to me. Like, were they predestined for down under, cooking in the pits before they were born? That seems a very harsh thing, and it doesn't seem like God, But who am I to say at the same time? But I would say that I do believe in fate, only to the extent where we are destined for certain places, we are destined for certain things, but I don't think we can just say that we can leave our lives up to fate, Because to say, it's 31 minutes, but because to say that is like, you're taking responsibility for your life from yourself. And in the Bible it says, faith without work is dead. So how can you believe in God and believe that everything's going to turn out alright, use your faith, but then don't act? It takes away from the whole fated thing, It makes it kind of void. It seems very strange to me. That's a weird paradox. I'm sure with a bit of study I could figure that out, and then like I said, I don't know everything. I know very little. You could ask me probably a math question for like a 6th grader and I might mess up. Like, I mean, go on. But even still, I accidentally clicked the question button. Alright, next question. Would you rather be tall and fat or short and well built? How fat are we talking? And how short are we talking? I'm like 6'3", 6'2", 6'3" right now. So, there are perks to being tall. And having everything flipped seems absurd to me. Now, it would make things a bit more convenient at times, You could probably cram underneath a desk very easy if you wanted to, or sleep underneath the bed if you wanted to. I'm sure there are perks to being shorter. But short and well-built, and the well-built and the fat thing, unless it's a medical condition, are things that can be adjusted, But tall and short usually aren't, unless you want to go ultra-medical and get your bones, like, stretched, like on the big old horrible medieval rack where they would twist you both ways. So I would say I would probably be tall and fat, because seeing myself fat would incite some sort of rage deep within me, and I would go on like an exercise streak, and I'd either die of a heart attack or become shredded. So, one of the two. Alright, it's 33, I should really end it, but I'm actually kind of liking this. Do you keep a journal? I did. I went to a book sale, and there was a journal, like an empty journal. It was a beautiful book, though. And I was like, I've always wanted to keep a journal, and I feel like it could be useful. I mean, right now, it's basically what I'm doing. I'm just yapping. And I wanted to, just write, to see what it looked like, what my thoughts looked like from the outside. Because, that's one of the big things with journal keeping. You can go back and reread what you're thinking. Okay. And, you can learn something from yourself. So I did keep a journal, but I only wrote 1 page in it, and it was rather unsavory. So I haven't written in that journal for a while. Although I should probably go back and start that back up. It's very useful to have something like that. I should totally end it, but this is actually really nice, Starting it off was really strange, because you're sitting there staring at yourself, recording this on my blasted phone, like, it can be really strange. I could get something like this, just upload it straight away. There's no guarantee anyone will ever see it, but for the one person who does see it, it's just something to listen to. So it is like a journal in a way. Alright, one more question. If there was an extra hour every day, what would you do with it? Well, to say that there's an extra hour, unless the Earth's rotation just gets slowed up suddenly, which would have disastrous effects, I would imagine. But unless that were to just happen, 9 times out of 10, there would already have been an extra hour if we're just placing it in. And I wouldn't be aware of the extra hour. So unless it had some terrible catastrophic effect on history, which I guess it could if there's an extra hour in the day, the sun may set a little while later, certain wars and battles could have ended differently. I mean, it could be really silly like that, and it may not even exist because there's an extra hour in the day. Can you imagine? Butterfly effect is absurd. But, yeah. So 9 times out of 10, if there was an extra hour in the day, I wouldn't even realize it, And in the odd case where I did suddenly get mind beamed in that there was an extra hour in the day that I was unaware of, and it's been an extra hour my entire life, would I do anything different with it? I might say yes, I would, and then go to sleep early, An extra hour when, work and school would all still wrap around in the same manner. It might even take a little longer because you have a longer day. So I can't say I would really do anything different with it. But I guess that's not very interesting. If I had an extra hour in the day, I'd make sure to do 3 jumping jacks and yell like I'm out of a Dr. Seuss book. Just cause, yeah, see, what? Alright, one more. What was your first car? Well, I had a lovely Hot Wheels back when I was in... Well, no, I might not have even been in a grade. I might have been before, maybe pre-K. I had a nice Hot Wheels car. Can we count that? Because as it stands, I don't really have a stinking vehicle. Okay, that one was a little void. We'll go into another one. If money was not an issue, what would you do? Well, I'm not so sure. If money wasn't an issue... everyone says they'd like to travel, and I guess that would be nice, but I have to learn the language. I guess I would get really good, a good tutor for the guitar, or maybe a bad tutor, somebody who just plays but isn't all that good at teaching. That could be fun. I would probably do that. But then if money wasn't an issue, I would probably just donate to charity, because if money isn't an issue, and I can just donate to charity, how much money can I donate? You know what I'm saying? How much good could I actually do? And that would be interesting. But then I could just cause terrible inflation, and the charity could be corrupt. So there's no real telling. What is most important to you? Religion, family, friends. Being able to think is always really good. Food is also lovely, but I mean, if I was just reduced to really simple rations, I think I'd live with it and learn to live with it eventually. Probably. Maybe not. Very important to me. I really like history as a subject. I really like history, psychology, philosophy, stuff like that. Real silly subjects, the humanities. That's always very nice. But most important to me, if it's only one thing, then religion. Alright, next thing. If you could be any age, what age would you pick? Excuse me. Is this to imply forever? Because what, I just go and turn some random age? How long do I stay this old, I cannot say. I could pick something solid. But if I'm just staying that old forever, then I would probably just stay how I am now. Do I get to keep my memories and the likes? Because if I don't, well then I turn young again, but then I'm every bit as silly as I was when I was that old. And it's okay, so I've turned back the clock, but I still have to go through all of the experience that made me who I am now to get there again. Could have worded that bit better. But regardless, if I could be any age, yeah, like I said, I'd probably just stay as old as I am right now. There's no real reason to push much further. There's no real reason to go back much further, you know? Everything else comes at a loss, you know? It'd be nice to be, I don't know, 15, 16, and run around acting like a fool for the rest of your life. But then you're below the legal limit, and you can't own a bunch of things, you know? Like I'm not sure if a 16-year-old can put down a down payment on the house, open up their own credit card, and bank and savings account and all that. There's a lot of things you can't do below a certain point. A lot of things you can do above. So I would probably stay about where I am right now. But then there's the hormone thing and mood swings with being below a certain age, and that could be a bit of an issue. But then you go above too much, and it comes at a cost, and there's always an everything. And who's to say you actually stay at that age? So that's very vague, but I guess that's the point of the questions. What are my favorite topics to talk about? Anything that requires talking about for more than like 5 seconds. If it's something that I can say more than yes or no to, and it isn't out, well, you can go against blasphemy. You can talk against that. That's a good debate. My favorite topics to talk about then, anything that requires more than a yes or no. And I don't mean like, what did you do yesterday? I mean like proper conversation, I enjoy that. This video might end up being an hour if I don't cut it short. To be honest, I just want somebody to watch the video, so I don't really care. The longer video time could be an issue. Maybe I just title it a certain way. Just say, here, click this video, and I will talk to you for an hour. I'm sure somebody would click that. If you did, and you're actually at this point, make sure to subscribe. I'm talking to no one at the present moment because this is just a recording. That's strange. Anyways, are you a giver, taker, or matcher? That's rather vague. Giver, taker, or matcher of what? If we're talking about a giver or taker or matcher of most things, then probably a giver, because I much prefer to see people happy than myself, which is pretty cool. But if it's a giver, taker, or matcher of something really obscure, like the sort of things that shouldn't be given, taken, or matching, like somebody's internal organs, well, I'm not a giver, taker, or matcher of internal organs, am I? So, you think. So, I can't really say. It really depends on what are we talking about. Another random question. My favorite hangout spot. I really like hanging out in the library, but admittedly, I have one friend, so and he's a guy. I'm not to that end, so we don't really go anywhere. He's my best friend, best pal. Known him for years. My favorite place to hang out is definitely the library. My own room is lovely. I like it there. Nice and quiet, but there are times where I'd rather keep my own room to myself. I don't want it to become a hangout spot, because then they bring with them, well, them. It's not to say, oh, I hate people. No, it's not like that. But it can be a bit of an issue. It's my own place where I want to sit down at. More than a library, it's like my room. Nice, quiet, plenty of books. If you're lucky, they'll have a random plant in the windowsill, and then bam, you're set right back at home. Nice and quiet. If you're lucky, again, the temperature isn't too bad. And then you can just sit down, read, draw, do whatever you want. Just keep the peace, And I like that. But I also like aquariums and stuff like that. So there's no real telling. But probably a library. Another question. What movies have you rewatched the most number of times? There's this movie called Grizzly, I believe, 1987. It's this horror movie about a grizzly bear. And it's absolutely, it's amazing. It's amazing. The bear knocks a horse's head off with a single swing, and it's like one of those stupid horse heads, like the little fake props, and it spins around in the air. It's absolutely insane. I nearly coughed out a lung laughing at that. But not the horse in particular. I really like horses. I mean the actual movie. It was a very funny movie. Anyhow, yeah, that was probably my most rewatched movie. I watched that one maybe twice. I don't watch many movies. Well, the Jurassic Park movies were very nice, like I said, like dinosaurs. And actually, Jurassic Park was absolutely amazing. I was actually very afraid to watch those movies when I was very, 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 very young. because they would jump on like the Velociraptor jump on somebody's back and like take out their spine and eat him, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is horrible. All the glamour of the dinosaurs were ripped right from me in one fell swoop of an hour and 45 minutes, however long that movie was. But anyways, probably one of the Jurassic Park movies or Grizzly 1987, I believe. One thing I would like to become better at, again, any of my hobbies, probably electric guitar, maybe drawing. I'd like to learn how to do like a backflip though, like acrobatics in general, so I can jump around the room like a stinking ninja and do absolutely nothing with that skill, just being able to jump around the room like a stinking ninja. Alright, next question. Describe my perfect first date. Honestly, I think the perfect first date is made more by the people who go there. I would say that you can enjoy any place that's not literal down under, like roasting in the bottom of the pits of HE double hockey sticks with anyone. I'd say you can enjoy most places with just about anyone. It depends on who you're with, I would say. The date is made by the people who go there. Say it's just like the library, not even eating anything, just sitting there chilling, reading books or playing like with Pokemon cards, like something ridiculous like that. It's really made by the company. If you don't enjoy the people you're with, then the perfect date, it's never gonna matter. Say you go to like the Bahamas, but the person who you take there doesn't even care for you and runs off with the first person they see. You know what I'm saying? It's like, if they're just using you for a trip, well then you're not gonna enjoy the date anyways. At least that's my take for all the dates that I've been on. Which is like, what, 3? Is 3? Did I seriously just get that off the top of my head? Was it 3? Ah, look at me, aren't I a showstopper? Me and my 3 dates. That's 3. Like, whatever. You prefer to eat at home or eat out? If I'm going with my family, then definitely eat out, because we're all pretty funny. We can joke with each other, so it can be very nice. And eating at home, that's lovely. But I mean, I cook. I cook pretty often, and of course I don't mind cooking. I really like cooking. But I would much sooner go out, have fun, not have to worry about cooking. Sure, you have to spend a pretty penny nowadays, but you get to have a good laugh, and I see it. You're paying for that and the conversation, the experience. Hopefully the audio's good, so I would say eating out. What would your pillow say to you if it could talk? Quit drooling on me, probably. Or maybe it would say to give me a new pillowcase. I got a fancy pillowcase for it, but probably give me a fancy pillowcase. Or I don't like the color green, or something silly. I mean, it's a pillow. Like, how big is its brain? How much does it know? What would its complaints be? Things like that. I don't have any of those really absurd waifu pillows. Like, how can you... My thing with that is, like, where do you even put it? Where do you put it? It's as tall as you are 9 times out of 10, and has a huge anime girl on one side and obscene scene on the other 9 times out of 10. It's like, where do you put it? And if that could talk to me, like, well, I don't have one for one. I'm not really sure what it would say or who it would be. Anyhow, if someone had one of those pillows and it talked to them, I dare say they would probably never leave their room again. They would probably never leave their room again. I have no idea what it would say, but whatever. My pillow would probably tell me to find better taste in bedding options, like maybe something that isn't green. I like the color green, I like the color blue, and I like the color red. Really crazy to like all 3, I know. Whatever. Are all people's lives equally valuable? I would say that I'd say yes, I'm sure there are people who are gonna go against me and say like, oh, so Hitler's life was incredibly valuable, but for most of the people that support him, he was like incredibly valuable to them. No, I'm not a Nazi. Oh my goodness. But I would say that everyone has the potential for change. you know, of course, as soon as they want to change, you know, I mean, like how God forgives nearly all sins, um, so too should people be forgiven, you know. I think it's good to look at people more as clay, you know, like wet clay instead of a blank slate. You know, both can be given form, you know, but one's a bit more concrete and solid than the other, you know. I don't think it's good to keep people in brain fart. I would say yes, all people's lives are equally valuable. Have I ever been to the emergency room in Mod 4? Yes. So that's another thing I should have mentioned wanting to get better at. So I was on a skateboard. Skateboarding, me, crazy, right? Who'd have guessed? And I fell right off it with my book bag on, and I landed on my foot with my book bag while twisting on one foot, and I was falling backwards all at the same time. And I landed on it, and I could hear the bone breaking from the inside of my stinking body. Like, I could hear the bone breaking. It was the most absurd thing. And I didn't really feel sick afterward. I kind of just laid there, and I was like, yeah, that wasn't good. And it didn't even really hurt. That's the crazy thing. It didn't even really hurt. I was just kind of there, just like, huh, well, that didn't sound good. I guess I should try and step up. I was at the college campus, by the way. And I'm trying to get up, and of course, my foot swelled up like immediately, and I couldn't really step on it, and so I kind of limped off to the side to try and find a branch, a good sturdy like stick to stand on, and I managed to find one, and I was kind of hobbling around, and I called myself a Uber because I was like, yeah, this is bad, and oh my goodness, the Uber driver shows up. And he sees me with the stick, and he sees me hopping all over the place. He's like, okay, he hurt himself. And I texted him and told him, yeah, I just think I hurt myself. And at the time, I just thought that I twisted my ankle. I just thought I twisted my ankle, you know, wishing for the best. And I get into the car with the stinking stick that I was using as a brace, and I scraped the top of his roof. And I'll never forget the look he gave me. He looked so broken. I was like, oh gee, dude, I'm sorry. It just got worse and worse, and I just threw the stick out of the car and just left it. And he was like, are you sure you don't want to grab it? And I was like, yeah, it'll be fine. And so I hobbled my way all the way back inside of the house afterwards. But a few days after that, I did end up going to the emergency room because, you know, of course, I'm like, I didn't know if it was broken for certain. I'd never broken a bone up until this point, and I was hoping for the best, and my dad was also hoping for the best. And so he said, we'll give it a day and see if the swelling went down. And it didn't, you know. And so in between that first day and the one after that, nothing happened. And so then we went to the emergency room, and they're like, yeah, dude, you broke your foot. I was like, huh. And so we got it fixed. So that's why. And then another time I thought I had monkeypox. I did not have monkeypox. What do you want your legacy to be? Probably something memorable, something good. Of course, there are very few people who get remembered for very long, you know? I mean, George Washington, he's still around. People still talk about him. So I suppose it's possible. Napoleon, people still talk about him. And of course, people talk about Jesus. So it's definitely possible to be remembered. I guess it really goes down to what you do. So what I want my legacy to be, something good, something to make people smile, you know? Maybe something to make someone feel a bit prideful, you know? The last thing I want is for someone to be like, I don't know, they just look at my grave and get like sad and furious. Like, how could you do this, dude? That's the last thing I would ever want. Yeah, that's what I would say. This is literally almost an hour long. This isn't that bad, just me talking though. What would you do differently if you could relive the past year? I would say if I wanted to relive things, I might have to go a bit further back than a year. Although, if it was just the past year, I'd say I would probably do more in school or just take a proper gap year because admittedly, I didn't really want to start off with you running on a bit too much, huh? I didn't really want to go to college full on. You know, there was a part of me that really didn't want to jump straight into college because I didn't really know what I wanted to do, you know? And so it was kind of something I was told to do, you know? And of course I went, but no part of me at all was really there in the classroom. Like, I spent the whole class multiple times just looking out the window, you know? And of course I did decent in the class, but I had to retake my stinking math class. I made it through English just because English is, you know, that's not so bad. I have to write a paper, I don't know. I say until I have to write like a 20-page paper. I don't do 20 pages. But yeah, English wasn't bad, and I didn't really have much of a concept of what the college life was. So I just went full on, full time, and I ended up not doing decent in a large portion of those classes. And I wonder if this is gonna come back to haunt me. Yeah, so I would say I would probably do a bit better in school. Maybe take fewer classes, or put my foot down and say I'm not going this year, and actually figure out what I want to do before I start college. Maybe just keep working instead, and get a car and get solid transportation down instead of burning through my little fund that I'd accumulated this summer on paying for college and transportation. Just biting the bullet, and not in a bad way, biting the bullet and getting a car would have been the sturdier option instead of rushing straight to college. So should I ever have kids, I'm probably going to be, you know, a bit more encouraging for them to eventually go to college, you know, because there's a value in education. But sending them straight off and making them go is one of the last things I would do. Because, I mean, that's not... You start taking a major that you aren't even sure about, you're wasting time and money, stressing you out. And to be honest, when you're fresh out of high school, at least that was for me, there's so many things in my mind, you know, on my mind, that I really wasn't ready for another year of sticking school. I wanted a break. So I would totally tell them not to rush straight for it. And likewise, if I could relive the past year, I probably wouldn't rush straight off to college. That's what I would say. Alright, it's almost at a stinking hour long, this stinking recording. So I'm just gonna finish it. If anybody does actually click this video and watch it at this point, they're either A, the poor individual who's at YouTube who has to watch through all of these videos, or they're B, some rather nice person who should subscribe. Alright, next question. What was the most challenging time of your life? Okay, so I guess if we're being technical, it would have been when I was very, 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 very young, like straight up newborn. Because, you know, then, you know, body's all new, you get up and die of some random disease. But if we're being a bit more sensible, I would say back when I was in high school, I had a breakup, and I actually really liked the girl, and I think she liked me too. But things didn't really work out. And I really only talked to her, and there was maybe I had my one friend that I was talking about earlier, but he had early college. I know, smart kid, and he was going off to early college, and so he wasn't in the school. And I didn't really talk to anyone, and nobody really wanted to approach me either. I had really tall, especially in high school, and I didn't really talk to anyone, and nobody really knew me or my interests. Very difficult to approach, and people would much rather just, you know, leave me be than talk to me. And for a while I'd been completely fine with that. That's what I was going for. I didn't want anyone to talk to me, mess with me at all. I'd much rather just be away from everyone, to just go through the school day and head back home, than put up with anyone or anything. But eventually I realized that I was very alone, you know? Very, very, very alone. And you might say you have your family, you know? And I get that, but you don't talk with your family about everything. No one does, I can imagine. Although I'd imagine the parents would be very happy to have their kids talking with them frequently about everything. I don't think that's how it goes for most people. And so, I had no one to talk to. Just got out of a breakup, and I was in my senior year. So of course it was like a moody teenager actually has nobody to talk to, and not really sure what they're going to do when they get out of high school. And so I had all of these problems on my mind, and no one that I was comfortable talking to about them with. I think I worded that last bit right. Anyhow, it was very, very, very difficult. Like, to the point where putting one foot after another just to make it to different classes on time was difficult. And of course I didn't tell anyone. And my hair was like properly like in front of my face like this, and yeah. So no one could really tell. And the school had a therapist, but darn if I was going to that place. So yeah, it just wasn't a very bright time. And I think my family was able to read that something was amiss, but I don't think anyone really wanted to address it, you know? I wasn't comfortable opening up about it. And maybe they just didn't want to open up that can of worms either. To be completely honest, I don't blame them, you know? I don't blame them. Although, in hindsight, maybe I should have spoken more. Although, looking at what happened after high school, everyone really just drifted apart. Not that I kept many contacts, of course, but with the ones that I did, it was kind of just like a sudden shut-off. People just went their own separate ways, and what was in high school suddenly wasn't, you know? It was a world that didn't exist anymore. Very, very moody, haha. So I would say I'm both happy and a bit upset that I didn't do more to talk with other people back in high school. Because, again, now I only talk to one person, really. And all of the relationships that I did have, both formal and not, they're all gone, you know? And so I can't say it would have mattered very much in the end. Just strange, but how do I know for certain, you know? That's a strange thing. Alright, one more question for real, because this video is already over an hour long and I'm totally not about to edit it. What is your favorite song of all time? My favorite song of all time. I can't say I have a favorite of all time. That's because I listen to so many different genres of music. Except for mumble rap. I don't listen to mumble rap. But most other genres of music I'll at least open an ear to, you know? But favorite song of all time? Stinkin' Nightwish. Ghost Love Score by Nightwish is really stinking good. And a few other songs by them. There's Ghost Love Score. Of course, Sleeping Sun is stinking phenomenal. And then there's Deep Silent Complete. That one's also really good. But after that, there's a few other people. Of course, Sabaton's always cool. Like I said, rock music. And then there's Pyramid by Wolfmother. That one's also really good. And there's Newborn by darn, I forgot their stinking name. Anyways, there's a lot of songs that I really like. And of course, there's some classical songs, like Waltz of the Flowers is really good. And of course, there's Waltz Number 2, yeah, I like the classics. And there's a few other ones. And then, darn, I forgot the name of it. There's a bunch of songs, like I said, like across a whole wide array of genres. It's very difficult to say just one song of all time. Alright, self-control is a virtue in its own right. As much as I would love to do another one, This video is already an hour long, and I might add music to the background, so at least it's something, you know? So I think I'll end it right here. So if, for whatever absurd reason, you are still watching, please, you know, like, subscribe, do me a favor. I mean, you could even comment something if you want, and if I see it, there's a decent chance that I will respond, because you're probably going to be one of the few people in the comment section. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. You never know what'll happen, you know? So stick around, and I'll probably upload another one of these tomorrow, since this was pretty easy. Likely along the same trend, maybe something different. We'll see what the people say. I have plans, distant plans, to get a proper PC, so I can actually record stuff, you know, actual video games. Wouldn't that be life? Wouldn't that be nice? Not life. It would, I guess it would be life if it actually worked. Wouldn't that be nice? Anyhow, I'll leave it at that. So, you know, have a nice day, nice evening, nice whatever. Don't do anything too rash. Let's please be sensible. And I will see you in the next video. 9 times out of 10. Something gonna get like a car or a meteor. Things can happen. You're never too sure. I'm wishing for the best. See ya.